a Q&A section after this as well if you have more questions. And also, I see a lot of people taking pictures of the slides, so we'll actually have a summary to send to all you guys if you have left your email address to us. So if you don't and you would like to have a summary of the meetup, please feel free to leave us your emails and we'll send it back to you. Thank you. I'll pass the mic to Maxi.
Hi everyone. So basically I will just do a quick introduction about myself. I'm a crypto entrepreneur and also I'm a content writer. And I'm very happy to be here to be the moderator of this event. So James, can you talk about yourself?
Sure, thanks. My name is James Quinn. I'm the head of markets for Kinetic. Kinetic is a full-service institutional blockchain platform. We have several business lines. We have an investments business line, which is based on asset management. So with several fund products, including tracker products, as well as actively managed funds. We have an advisory business. We've done over 20 deals to date, where we help companies when they're raising capital in crypto or issuing a token or doing those types of things in the blockchain space. We have a proprietary trading division, which also operates all of our exchange relationships. And My Peace Markets does OTC trading, treasury management, so I'm definitely coming to the stablecoin from the view of an operator. Like, I definitely saw that 88 price go through that Ryan talked about. So for me, stablecoins is about how well you can use them and what use they are to market operators. So I think we'll have a lot to talk about. For myself personally, I was a traditional finance guy for 20 years before I came into the crypto space, and we're just trying to build those types of institutional platform and relationship here.
Yeah, okay. So I guess you guys are about wired already, so we'll kick off the discussion. So my first question will be, since we heard so many great things about the stablecoin, so do you think we still need non-stable coin in the cryptocurrency market?
Yeah, by definition, because otherwise the stablecoins actually could be used for something if there were no other, like if there was no Bitcoin, it would just be a platform, right? It would just be a faster way to send value. This value would happen to be connected to fiat currency or some other stable form. At the end of the day, the stability is about the price of apples or some other good, right? You just want that thing to be worth somewhat the same to everything else you need to buy and sell in a given day at the end of it, right? So they still would be, but the space has grown because of the interest to invest in tokens that represent a company, tokens that represent utility, tokens that represent, I don't know, store of value, the new gold, whoever you want to look at, Bitcoin or something like that, Ethereum, a platform. So we could have them, but it would probably be a lot less rich ecosystem without.
I thought you meant a lot less rich. That would be the case too.
That too, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely, it's like we wouldn't have stable coins if it wasn't for cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin to begin with. Just like, we need somewhere to denominate them in an easy way. Now, I do think that stablecoins can eat into a lot of the use cases that people have said would be Bitcoin use cases. So these are things like remittances, kind of like I mentioned about, people have long been talking about using BTC for remittances. But it's like if you're sending money here, and by the time that it reaches someone, and by the time that they can move that to fiat, it's crashed by 10 or 15%. I mean, that's pretty crappy, right? And I think the same that goes for sort of the store of value use case, right? Everyone loves to talk about Venezuela, but if you're a Venezuelan that had bought BTC at the peak of 20K, and you're sitting there now, I mean, that's an awful store of value. And so I do think that there's a good case for putting something, in a situation like that into a stable coin rather than a volatile cryptocurrency.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people who started in space, and I'm sure there's a lot of kind of Bitcoin maximalists who are looking at stable coins or just any other token, and it's sort of the idea of, well, some people don't want to deal with fiat currency or don't effectively believe in fiat currency or something that isn't backed by gold or something real, right? So whether they choose to believe in Bitcoin or a token that's representing an asset, that's what separates that from a stablecoin, which might be backed by fiat or something else. But it is still a means of exchanging value, right? You're denominating the value to something, but doing it via stablecoin, I can just basically do it faster and more cheaply than I can with traditional wire transfer or means of doing it in fiat. So there's a little bit difference there.
Okay, so since you're you're from a financial background, so I would like to ask you, how will stablecoin revolutionize the current financial industry?
Well, that's a big question. Again, I think it goes back to the ability of crypto, well, really just the ability of blockchain. But let's step back a second. If you think of the internet as a new way to exchange information, maybe blockchain can be a new way to exchange value, right? So if stable coins represent something that you know and you can depend on, representing a value, again, I think it's back to a basket of goods and services, that now you have a different way to send money, right? Like if that stable coin is effectively taken, it's like overnight commercial paper or under credit, you can send it a lot quicker, you can send it a lot more cheaply. The remittance example would be one really simple one to understand. Why would you go to a place that's going to wire your money if you can just simply click a button and send to your relatives back home, and they know they're getting the same value that you sent them when you hit send in the first place? So I think it's not just about revolutionizing like the markets, it's just basically payments. It's now putting payments on the blockchain. At the end of the day, whether something else besides stablecoins becomes stable enough to become that form of money, or stablecoins themselves that are connected to money we know about now, maybe they're just a bridge into the future when other things become stable. But it's the form of payment that's the important part here.
Yeah, sure. Warren, do you have any idea?
Yeah, sure. I think there's maybe some interesting cases around, if we had multiple tokenized currencies, maybe it's a cheaper way to do forex trading, to move from US dollars to, let's say like whatever the Kenyan currency is, and then move back into the fiat version of that. Maybe that's something interesting for banks. I do think on the institution side, though, that if I was an institution, at least in the current crypto landscape, I would be very skeptical of entering when the headlines that I'm reading somewhat frequently and like the academic papers that I see getting put out are all pointing to that there's some sort of market manipulation in this market. And so if I was someone that had a bunch of LPs, or if I was a multinational bank, the risk I think now of getting into cryptocurrency is still pretty high, like outside of just like the basic price risk and all that. But I think that until we have more trustworthy stable coins denominated in the market, that we will still have some ways until we get the full institutional adoption.
Okay, so what do you think that it would actually lead to mass adoptions of stablecoin to the general public? Because I feel like for the general public, it's actually very difficult for them to get into cryptocurrency market because they don't really trust the system or they don't really know about the system. So where do you think stablecoin will actually help them understand the whole thing?
Sort of like I mentioned up there, I mean, I have been able to use TUSD to speak with some of the largest like proprietary trading shops in the US to basically say like, hey, I've sort of heard whisperings that you might be interested in getting into cryptocurrency. This is like a very easy trading strategy for you to execute on, and it's a very easy way for you to get into cryptocurrencies. And so at least in that sense, I mean, to the extent that we want to be a fiat on-ramp into crypto, I think that fiat collateralized stablecoins are pretty uniquely positioned to do that.
I would say that the things that are going to lead to mass adoption of stablecoins are the same things that would lead to mass adoption of any other cryptocurrency or any other, blockchain-based exchange of value. And that basically means it's going to be super easy, that my mom can do it, and that she has no idea that the blockchain's behind it, and that's how you're exchanging value. Whether at the end of the day, the means that they're using or what they're denominating in is a stable coin or it's Bitcoin or something else is going to depend on at that time when the technology is there, what's stable, right? There's going to be use case for something like, I do not want this value to change, so I'm sending this. And there's going to be cases where you're trying to invest in something, hoping it's going to change in value in some way. So stable coins may still be around in that sense and serving that purpose. Maybe there'll be some other coins that are stable at that point, we don't know. But the mass adoption, I think, has to do with the ease of use, not the specific use case for stable coins.
Yeah. So what do you guys think about the future market of stablecoin? What do you think of maybe next year? I know it's not possible to predict anything, but just your personal feels.
Well, yeah, it's tough to say. I mean, right now it's like, I'd say we are in a quote-unquote stablecoin war, right? Like, it really is TUSD, GUSD, USDC, and PAX, like, fighting for the top spot, and in my opinion, fighting for like a lot of the same quote currency listings. So if you look at USDT right now, one of the reasons they're so big is that everyone is basically forced to use them because everything is denominated in USDT on the exchanges. And so, I think one of the areas where TUSD is pulling ahead is that we've got the most quote currency cryptocurrency listings now. So we have TUSD denominated markets on LBank, EXX, DigiFinex, and one or two hoping to announce over the next 2 weeks or so. So I think that we'll keep fighting on that front. We're also seeing interesting things from exchanges in how they're thinking about this. So when Huobi launched all of our stablecoins, they launched this thing called HUSD, which basically, like, you can deposit any of the 4 stablecoins into HUSD, and then in theory, you're supposed to be able to redeem any of the 4 of them as well. And the reason that they did that is to aggregate all of our volumes on their exchanges. And so right now, if you were to trade on an exchange and have all 4 of our stablecoins, volumes are split between 4 different markets, and for an exchange, that's not ideal. So Huobi has kind of tried to solve that. With that, I've heard rumblings of other exchanges doing things along those lines, but if I have to make predictions for the next year, it's that Tether continues to shrink in dominance. It's that we see more TUSD, or all stablecoin, denominated markets on exchanges, and we see the launch of some of these algorithmic coins as well. I think Basecoin is supposed to launch this year, so that's getting pretty close. There's a couple other algorithmic coins that I'm following that I think will probably launch in the next couple months, so super excited to see how those play out as well.
I mean, if I'm trading a stable coin, I want it to be as boring as possible.
Yeah.
I want it to basically be as stable as possible, not move and not have to think about it.
Yeah.
The other thing I'm looking for is it to be easy as possible. If I need to redeem or create, I want that to involve the least number of steps and the least number of chances to go wrong. So I think eventually the market's going to gravitate towards a couple solutions. There'll probably be a number as there are now over the course of the next year. And eventually, there'll be some type of network effect, and a couple of those coins will win out because I think they're going to satisfy those requirements that people in the market will need. I think generally, the size of the total stablecoin market will probably continue to grow relative to the size of the overall cryptocurrency market. That's depending on the big aspects of what we're kind of thinking with institutional players coming in. If you're a traditional equity guy and you need to move into cash, moving into Bitcoin, which has X amount of volatility per year, isn't going to cut it. You need to move into something that looks a lot like cash, and you can tell your boss, well, the market went down today, but we didn't lose any money because I'm in something that was the same amount of apples as it was yesterday, right? So I see that as something those guys are going to be really familiar with, they're going to need in order to sort of up the chain, explain their sort of investment strategies. Things denominated in Bitcoin are going to be more difficult for them to adopt in the beginning as they're coming into the market. So I see stablecoins as having a growing importance relative to other tokens or other coins.
Thank you. Can we just open up to Q&A section now?
I saw a few hands come to you guys.
Thank you for insights. A couple of questions. First, can you share your thoughts on regulation and is it eventually going to turn into something like as heavily regulated as banks with AML and KYC on every transaction? Second question: how do you think blockchain scalability affects? How is it a bottleneck right now for stablecoins?
On the regulation side, our sort of thoughts so far have been that we need to own and be very responsible for the fiat on and off ramp points. So when people are moving into USD or moving back into fiat, but I haven't gotten any sort of guidance or guidance from our legal counsel in the U.S. that there's going to be a level where every transaction needs to be KYC against each other. Maybe in when we start having security tokens trade, that will be something that's needed. I've had whitelisted addresses, and you can only move between those addresses. I think 0x and Wire have both put out sort of interesting ideas for that. And then the second question was
Scalability as a bottleneck?
Don't have a ton of opinions on that. I do think that if stablecoins were ever going to be used in some sort of high frequency fashion, we definitely would need better scaling solutions. But for the time being, where they're being used mostly just for trading, current solutions seem to work pretty well.
Yeah, I think that governments ultimately will want the same KYC, AML comfort they're having now, and if everything moves over to stablecoins, they're going to try to find a way to be involved. Maybe they'll be happy with the on and off ramps from fiat, if those are big organizations that they can get a handle on. Don't forget that one of the reasons stablecoins exist is because banks do not like to onboard cryptocurrency companies because they're worried about KYC and AML. Where there's a ton of transactions going on the other side of it, things are coming in from wallets that they don't know who owns those wallets. Things are going out to wallets they don't know who owns those. It's a lot easier to trace a bunch of wire transfers. Now you can trace things on the blockchain, obviously, but you don't know who owns it. So that's the reason that stablecoins exist. So I would expect that if they really become dominant, as they might do because they should be cheaper and faster to move value around than traditional fiat, at least in the way wire systems and payment systems are set up now, that we would see more hand in that. And scalability, I don't have a super strong view on that, but I would see that as being different than scalability in any other crypto, right? At the end of the day, if you're trying to push about this thing through the blockchain, you got to figure out a way to do it.
Cool. I think we have questions here.
Just want to know the business model. I think Dr. asked, like, is that like through the interest where you earn on the US dollar in the banks, and
Yes.
that's the only one, or the transaction fee, like 10 basis point, or
Yeah, I mean, when we started originally, we had 10 basis point purchase and redemption fee. I mean, it was pretty, we realized pretty quickly, like, with all the competitors coming out there, it's just a race to the bottom on that. So we just went right to zero on purchase and redemption fees.
okay. And it's a US company, TUSD?
Yes.
Okay.
No one next to you.
So given like the announcements of SFC last week, I want to ask a bit about the classification of stablecoins. Like, obviously there's views of whether it's a security or not, and etc. I guess my second question, not really related, is just kind of like the comparison versus other collateralized stablecoins versus your trust tokens. Since, there's quite a few of them that you've also named up there. Like, what is the actual difference in terms of like either maybe just the basis of the mechanics behind it or something?
Yeah, so I saw that the Hong Kong SEC equivalent put something out. I didn't read it though, so I don't know something about that. And the question there is, what is TUSD classified as? Have all the legal memos and stuff, not a security. If I'm, if my legal counsel's watching this, he'll be mad if I get this wrong. I believe TUSD is classified as a derivative on the US dollar. And so, like, technically that falls under the jurisdiction of the CFTC. I think I got that right. Now, the second question was, one more time? Sorry, the two questions.
The differences in
Between other
other
stablecoins.
collateralized stablecoins.
Oh, right. I mean, different use cases for sure, right? I mean, right now, I think Binance is a good example. They're opening up local exchanges for each, sort of domicile with the local currencies as well. And so, for as global as crypto is, it is definitely still sort of regionalized. And so, what we've been told is that, yes, everyone's kind of familiar with the US dollar, but there are still people that would like to be able to trade in their native currencies, whether that's euro, whether that's yen, probably can't touch RMB, but, so things like that. And then, I'd say for the most part though, like, technologically, between all of them, it's all sort of the same structure.
In terms of regulation, in a broader sense, just very quick, if stablecoins really start to take a significant portion of market share from where traditional fiat would have been used for that transfer, you could probably expect the regulators to be like, hey, that's just fiat with another hat on, so it needs to be regulated in the same way. And like, for example, whether or not it's a security, you might have to be a regulated firm to work with dollars or other fiat currency in a certain way, and I would expect stablecoins to eventually be put in that bucket should they fulfill that role on a global market scale.
And we are a registered money services business in the US as well.
I think, do you have questions up front? Or here first, probably.
Quick question. In the presentation.
Sorry, it's turning off. Sorry.
Quick question. In the presentation, you showed a few slides with PayPal there.
Yeah.
Can you now buy True USD with PayPal?
Oh no, sorry. That was meant to be an example. I wish, but PayPal sort of created something that you could plug onto websites and then you could pay with PayPal. And so sort of what Stripe does now, it's an easy way for people to accept or make payments on websites with like little developer work. And so one of the things that we're working on is having like a pay with TUSD. Or so that you can, if you're a new exchange that's launching, you can set this up on your site and then use that as a way to on-ramp people.
Do you have any credit card processors that you could buy on a credit card or something going on?
I believe there are some groups that have done that independently. We don't do that directly though, just because of the fact that TUSD needs to be fully collateralized. So I don't actually know what the other people, there's one company I just read the other day that's doing something like that. I don't know what they're doing exactly. My guess though is that they're keeping a large inventory of TUSD, allowing people to buy with credit card and then just sort of filling those orders. So, but we do not accept that directly now.
Okay, it seems like Henry got a supplementary.
No, just like thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, we do advise on the TUSD, and some people raise a question about the regulatory nature of that. I think the short answer is that because that's like client privilege, I can't tell a lot more. But we have a really difficult debate and all that. Like we have worked a lot with the TUSD team, and I would say like although like we have actually looked at all the sort of the stable coin on the market and all that, different categories and all that, that's true. So like some of that may be secondary, some may not be the case, but I would say out of all the different structure, I think TUSD would have one of the sort of the best structure out there. So if anyone is interested in that, you may want to talk more with the TUSD team too.
I promise I did not pay that guy.
Oh, that was amazing.
Great customer testimony.
The mic is
Yeah.
speaking.
Oh, okay. This may be out, but I mean, on the adding to the topic of regulation. So,
My favorite.
so your general feeling is that it's treated as a commodity interest or derivative asset, so it's within the CFTC net.
Again, like I have a written response I'm always supposed to give to that question. I'm very bad at remembering it now. But I believe that it's that TUSD is classified as a derivative on the US dollar.
Right.
I'll be honest, I'm not a lawyer by any stretch. I barely
But that hasn't impacted U.S. persons investing in exchanges overseas that are listing the product and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, our general stance has been that we need to man the on and off ramps to fiat, but sort of like, what happens in the middle there, it's just like, US dollar, right? I mean, if it's being traded globally around the world, if it's, obviously we don't promote any sort of nefarious use cases, and, if the government approaches us and like, hey, this is, a known Al-Qaeda address or something, we work with law enforcement to try and block that or stop that.
But then exchanges that list your true USD don't necessarily have the same opinion in terms of whether it's a commodity interest or not. Or feel that it falls within the remit of the CFTC.
What do you mean by that?
Well, some exchanges like Bitfinex have had issues with the CFTC for offering commodity interest to, so,
I don't have a great answer.
Never mind, we'll have a lot of questions. So I saw here, you come to here first and they come here. Okay.
So I would be interested in some metrics. For example, how many of newly generated Tree USD go to centralized exchanges? How many are exchanged for crypto